Hi everybody, welcome back to my theory channel, and this is video 2 of intervals. And in this video I'm going to be showing you how to do an interval question, but first I just want to recap. So remember, we spoke about a range of intervals that can happen in a major key, and the one I missed out in the last video is a unison, right? It's this interval here. Unison is also known as a perfect first. So remember, we discussed the first kind of names that you have to learn when doing intervals before they become altered or changed. And that would be a perfect first, a major second, right? A major third, a perfect fourth, a perfect fifth, a major sixth, a major seventh, and this is called an octave, but it is also called a perfect eighth. Okay, so what you've got to realize, the first thing is that within a major scale, you have to know that there's perfect first, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, perfect eighth. And that's the basis, that's the beginning point. Right, how do we do an interval question? So what I always do is I isolate the two notes they've given you. Whatever format they give it to you, I always take the bottom note. Let's take C, for example. I always take the bottom note and I use the bottom note as the key reference, as a major key reference. I never work in minor. I only work in major. I isolate and I work in major. Right. So there are 3 steps to an interval question. Right. The first step is, let's just count the interval, and you can't believe how many people get the distance of the two notes wrong. So take your sharp pencil, put it on this note, on the line, and count 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're going line, space, line, space. There are so many pupils that I have that this is the first part and the easiest part, and this is the part they get wrong. They say that's a fifth. And what they do is they quickly look with their eye, but they're not using their pencil to actually count them. So take your sharp pencil and count up from the bottom note to the top. And do not start counting after the note, count on the note. So that's the first step. So we know that this is a fourth. And now the next step is, what is the bottom note? Right. So this becomes your key. This becomes which major key you're working in, the bottom note of the set. Right. So over here, we would then go to our key line. I encourage my students to draw out their key line. Go to your key line and say, how many sharps and flats does C major have? And then we say, which is the last step, we say, what has happened to the second note in relation to this first note? Is it in the key? Has it changed? Is it still what it's supposed to be in relation to this key? Right, so in this case, C major has no sharps and flats. And if you were to draw out C major like that, your question would be, has something happened to this note, or is it in the key of C major? And the answer is, it is in the key of C major. Nothing has happened to it. And by that, I mean that it doesn't have a sharp, right? It doesn't have a flat, it doesn't have anything like that. Okay, sorry, excuse my hand. It is squarely in the key of C major, and therefore it gets its first name that I told you about. And that first name in this case is a perfect fourth. So when you are looking for those first names, you've just got to remember perfect first, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, perfect eighth. Right, and those are the birth names, the first names of the intervals, right, before they become altered. So let's go through that process again. Let's do it slightly differently. Here is your interval, but in this time around, the second note has been raised. It has a sharp sound in front of it, and a sharp sound takes the note up by a semitone. So, what do we do? We say, what has happened to the second note in relation to this first note? Is it in the key? Has it changed? Is it still what it's supposed to be in relation to this key? Right, so in this case, C major has no sharps and flats. And if you were to draw out C major like that, your question would be, has something happened to this note, or is it in the key of C major? And the answer is, it is in the key of C major. Nothing has happened to it. And by that, I mean that it doesn't have a sharp, right? It doesn't have a flat, it doesn't have anything like that. First step, count 1, 2, 3, 4. We know it's a fourth. Right. Second step, what is the key? To find this interval relation and what has happened in the second note, we have to find the key. And that's always your first note. We're in C major. And then the third step is to say, what has happened to this note? Is it still in C major or has it been altered? In this case, it's been raised, and any interval that gets raised once or goes up a semitone on that second note is an augmented interval. So now it becomes an augmented fourth. Okay, let's do another example. So we take the same interval, but it's got a flat in front of it, right? So now, first step, count up. We've counted, we know it's a fourth. Right. Take the bottom note. This is the key, C major. What has happened to the second note? Is it still in C major? Is it an F natural? No, it's not. It's been lowered once. And a perfect fourth does not go to minor. It goes straight to diminished. So this becomes a diminished fourth. Right, let's do it with another example that's not in C major. These two notes. Now, you're in F major because this is your bottom note. So step one, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. We know this is a fourth. Now we're in F major. F major, go to your key line or to whatever system you use to find the major keys. F major has got one flat. There's the key signature. I'm just putting it there for reference purposes. So this note in F major should be flattened. If I drew out F major, it would look like this. But this note is not flattened. Theoretically, this note is a B natural. So now you've got to say, this is the last step, you've got to say, what has happened to this note in relation to the key, the bottom note being your key, This should be a B flat. If you put a natural in front of a note instead of a flat, it becomes raised. It's been raised once, therefore it is an augmented fourth. Okay, one more. How about this one? Got two notes, count the interval. Step 1, 1, 2, 3. It's definitely a third because I've counted properly. Now, the bottom note is the key. Go to your key line. You only work in a major. We are in B major. B major has 5 sharps. I'm going to write that down for you. Put it in brackets because we're not using it at the moment. But that's your key of B major. And then you say, last step, what has happened to the second note? Right, so if you had to draw out B major, fat, cat, goes down, and that is B major right there. And this note here, which is the third, should be sharp in B major. So what's happened to it? It's been lowered once. If you lower a sharp, it goes down by a semitone, and therefore this is a minor third. Right, so if you have a major interval, which it would have been, you go down to minor. Right. So that's that's the basis of intervals and the basic method that you can approach them by. And for me, I only work in a major key. I isolate the two notes. You'll sometimes find that you have a question that looks like this. Something like that. I'm not sure if my stems are correct, but you'll have something like that, and I'll say, what is the interval between these two notes? And what I do is I always take the bottom notes as the reference, as the key, and then on a rough piece of paper, I'll isolate these two notes like that, and I'll say, that's what I'm working with. Right. Step 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is a fifth. This is the key of A major. It has 3 sharps. This does not get a sharp in A major, therefore it is in the key of A major, and if it is in the key of A major, it is a perfect fifth. But what I do is I always take the bottom note, even if the interval is reversed. Sometimes they say, what is that interval? They give you a little star like that, or an under A. Please tell me what the interval is. always take the bottom note and work out the interval in relation to that bottom note as being the major key center. Don't worry about minor at all. Just reference your major. Great, thanks.